Welcome to another Explainer. Today, we're doing something really fun. We are stepping straight into the world of classic fables to level up our English reading skills and vocabulary together. We're looking at Aesop's famous tale, The Oak and the Reeds. You know, learning through stories is honestly one of the most effective and definitely the most engaging ways to master a language. It gives words real context, it gives grammar a heartbeat, and it leaves us with a little bit of wisdom we can carry into our daily lives. So get ready to dive in, practice, and explore this fantastic E3 level text with me. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our quick roadmap for today. First, we'll meet the oak and the reeds. Second, we'll brave the violent tempest. Third, we'll do a core vocabulary review. Fourth, we'll uncover the golden quote. And finally, we'll wrap up with some role-play practice. Section 1. The Oak and Reeds. Let's set the scene and meet the wildly contrasting characters of our story living side by side right there on a quiet riverbank.
Picture this. First, you have the mighty oak. Imagine a massive, thick trunk, incredibly deep roots, and this booming, proud voice. The oak stands firm and tall, basically boasting that it never, ever bends for anyone or anything. Now contrast that totally rigid attitude with the slender reeds. These are thin, delicate plants just growing by the water. They are the oak's humble neighbors, and they're characterized by the soft, swaying nature. They are constantly trembling and bowing to the elements around them. It's a classic setup of opposites.
Let's read through the very beginning of the story together. Listen closely to the flow. A mighty oak grew upon the bank of a river. Close beside it swayed a cluster of slender reeds. The oak was forever mocking his humble neighbors for their weakness. Now pause for a second and notice that phrase, forever mocking. It means the oak wasn't just mean to them once. No, he was constantly arrogant, always looking down on the reeds just because they didn't have his massive, imposing strength.
So the oak continues with some seriously arrogant dialogue. The faintest breath of wind sets you trembling and bowing, he scoffed. I, on the other hand, stand firm and tall, and never once bend my head, however hard the wind may blow. Pay really close attention to that vivid verb there, scoffed. It means to speak to someone in a totally scornful, mocking way. The oak is just so incredibly proud of his ability to stand firm and tall. He completely equates physical stiffness with strength, and he views the reed's flexibility as this huge fatal flaw.
Section 2. The Violent Tempest. All right, things are about to get intense. A major shift in the weather is about to put both the oak's rigid philosophy and the reed's flexible nature to the absolute ultimate test.
Let's see what actually happens when the weather turns nasty. That very night, a violent tempest swept across the land. The reeds bent low before the raging gale, yielding to every gust, and let the storm pass harmlessly over them. Wow! Notice the incredibly descriptive words the author uses here, like violent tempest and raging gale. They paint a picture of immense, totally uncontrollable power. But look at the reed's strategy. They didn't try to fight it. By yielding to every gust and just bending low, they survived. Their supposed weakness actually became their ultimate shield.
But what about our big, boasting tree? But the proud oak, refusing to bend even a little, stood rigid against the wind, until at last it was torn up by the roots and hurled to the ground. That is a dramatic, absolutely powerful consequence. The oak remained completely rigid, It stubbornly fought the unyielding force of the storm with its own unyielding pride, and, well, the result is devastating. Try to really emphasize that visual in your mind. This enormous tree, completely torn up by the roots and hurled to the ground, a total, undeniable collapse.
Section 3, Core Vocabulary Review. Let's take a breather and consolidate all that rich E3 level vocabulary we just encountered in the story.
Now, what's really interesting here is how these specific words perfectly shape the personalities of our characters. We have the mighty oak, which represents pure physical strength. And then we have words like sway and slender reeds, which give us this real sense of gentleness and motion. We also have scoff, which is just a brilliant verb to describe arrogant mocking, perfectly contrasted with the word humble, describing someone who is modest and doesn't boast at all. Memorizing these words in pairs of opposites like this really helps lock them right into your brain.
Moving right along to our storm-related vocabulary, these words are exactly what create the powerful imagery of the fable's ending. I mean, a violent tempest and a raging gale aren't just your everyday rain showers. We are talking about catastrophic weather events. And then look at the reaction words. Yield to versus rigid. To yield is to willingly give way, to be flexible. But to be rigid is to be stiff and totally uncompromising. And of course, the dramatic conclusion, to be torn up by the roots, meaning complete and utter destruction.
Section 4, the golden quote. Every Aesop's fable has a core moral, right? Let's zoom in on the powerful takeaway from this story.
It is better to yield and endure than to resist and be broken. Let that sink in for a second. It's beautiful. Notice the absolute perfect symmetry in that sentence. On one side, you have yield and endure, which is flexibility leading to survival. And then on the exact opposite side, you have resist and be broken, which is pure stubbornness leading straight to destruction. The crucial point of this entire story is beautifully captured here. True strength isn't always about standing tall, flexing your muscles, and fighting every single force that comes your way. Sometimes true strength is having the wisdom to know exactly when to step back, when to adapt, and when to let the storm just pass right over you, so you can continue to grow tomorrow. It's a huge shift in perspective.
Section 5, Role Play Practice. All right, it's time to put all this knowledge to the test. Let's step right into the shoes of the characters and actively apply the vocabulary we've just learned together.
Here is your first scenario. I want you to imagine you are the fallen oak. You've learned your lesson the really, really hard way. If you could go back in time, how would you respond to the wind differently next time? Try to construct a sentence in your mind right now using our vocabulary word, yield. Go ahead, give it a shot. You might say something like, next time the raging gale comes, I will try to yield to the wind instead of staying so rigid. Or maybe, I have learned that I absolutely must yield if I want to survive. Okay, scenario 2. Now switch it up. Imagine you are one of the slender reeds. The storm has passed, you are totally safe, and the other riverbank plants are desperately asking how you survived. Explain your strategy to them, but you have to use the phrase bend low. How would you phrase it? Well, you could say, when the violent tempest hits, you must bend low to the ground. Or perhaps, our secret to survival is simply that we bend low and let the storm pass right over us. See? That is exactly how you put your new vocabulary into action.
And finally, scenario 3.
And this brilliantly illustrates our whole theme. Imagine you were a witness, just standing far off on a safe hill, watching the entire storm unfold before your eyes. What advice would you give to others based on what you saw, using the words endure and resist? You might advise them, do not resist the forces you cannot control. Instead, find a way to endure. Or simply put, those who resist will fall, but those who endure will live to see the sun rise.
Excellent work on those exercises. We've mastered the narrative, we've grasped the vocabulary, and we've really understood the moral. But I want to leave you with one final provocative question to reflect on today. In your own life, in your career, your relationships, or your studies, when is it better to stand your ground like the mighty oak, and when must you adapt and bend like the slender reed? It's a tricky balance we all have to find. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today, and keep practicing those E3 vocabulary words. I'll catch you next time.